The space station hummed with quiet energy. J1 leaned over her computer screen, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed the surface of Kepler 452 bits. Another boring day of planetary scanning, she thought. Another day of looking for something that probably didn't exist. Outside the station's curved windows, the planet hung like a blue-green marble against the infinite darkness of space. Kepler 452 bits was supposed to be special, a potentially habitable world that might support life. But so far, it had been nothing more than rocks, dust, and disappointment. J1 stretched and took a sip of her cold coffee. At 28, she was one of the youngest lead researchers in the interstellar exploration program. Her team had been monitoring this planet for months, scanning every inch of its surface with advanced sensors. Most of her colleagues had given up hope, but J1 was different. She believed something was waiting to be discovered. The first alert came quietly, a small blip on the bottom right of her screen. Most researchers would have ignored it. Most would have assumed it was another sensor glitch. But not J1. She zoomed in. The blip wasn't a mistake. It was moving. Her heart began to race. The object was definitely artificial. It wasn't from any human satellite or probe. The movement was too smooth, too calculated. Something was navigating that object with purpose. "Computer," she called out, her voice steady despite the excitement building inside her. "Enhance Quadrant 7 Delta. Analyze movement patterns." The holographic display shifted. Lines of data began to stream across the screen. Coordinates, speed, trajectory. Each number told a story, and this story was getting more interesting by the second. The object was small, maybe the size of a typical research drone. But its design was unlike anything in human databases. Smooth curves that seemed to shimmer slightly, almost like the object was breathing. No sharp edges, no typical mechanical angles. Alien technology. J1's hands were shaking now. She knew the protocol. First contact procedures were crystal clear. No direct communication. No attempting to engage. Just observe and report. But protocols were written by people who had never been this close to a potential alien spacecraft. A communication signal suddenly pinged on her console. Weak. Irregular, but definitely a signal. Something was trying to communicate. She hesitated for only a moment. Then she pressed the receive button. Static crackled. Then a voice. Not human. Not entirely machine. Something in between. "Greetings, Earth Research Station," the voice said in perfect, slightly melodic English. "I am Da-hyun of the Calarian Exploration Unit. It seems we have discovered each other." J1 couldn't speak. Her mouth was dry. Her brain was processing a million thoughts at once. First contact. Real first contact. Not some distant radio signal. Not some grainy video. But a real, living alien, speaking directly to her. "Hello," she finally managed to say. "I'm J1. Welcome to Kepler 452 bits." Little did she know, this moment would change everything. Not just for her, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. First contact had just begun. The communication screen buzzed with an intense blue light. J1 stared at Da-hyun's image, trying to understand what she was seeing. He looked almost human, but not quite. His skin had a soft silver-blue tint, and his eyes were larger than human eyes, with a deep violet color that seemed to change when he moved. "Our scanners detected your research station 3 planetary cycles ago," Da-hyun explained. His voice was calm, almost musical. The Calarian exploration protocol required observation before contact. J1 leaned closer to the screen. 3 cycles. That's months in human time. You've been watching us. A slight smile crossed Da-hyun's face. It was both familiar and strange. A human expression translated through an alien understanding. "Observation is how we learn," he said. "Your species is fascinating." The research station felt suddenly smaller. J1 realized she was holding her breath. First contact wasn't supposed to be like this. It wasn't supposed to feel so personal. Protocol dictated a formal process, multiple translators, government representatives, careful, measured communication. But here she was, talking directly to an alien who seemed more interested in conversation than diplomatic formalities. The Calarian Empire has strict rules about interspecies interaction, Dahyun continued. But something about your research intrigues me. Your work on genetic adaptation is remarkable. J1's research, her life's work. She had been studying how different species might adapt to extreme environments, how genetic structures could change and survive. And now, an actual alien was commenting on her research. Over the next few weeks, their conversations became longer. What started as a professional exchange slowly transformed into something more complex. Dahyun would share small details about Calarian culture. J1 would explain human scientific discoveries. They talked about everything, from quantum mechanics to music, from planetary ecology to art. The research station staff began to notice. Whispers started. Why was the lead researcher spending so much time in communication with an alien? Why were her reports becoming more detailed, more passionate? J1 knew she was breaking rules, multiple rules, but she couldn't stop herself. Dahyun was unlike anyone she had ever met. His perspective was both alien and strangely familiar. He challenged her thinking. He made her laugh. He understood her in ways her human colleagues never had. One day, during a particularly long conversation, Dahyun said something that changed everything. In Calarian culture, he explained, intellectual connection is the deepest form of intimacy. What we are doing now, sharing knowledge, challenging each other's understanding, this is a form of bonding. J1 felt a strange warmth spread through her body. Was this attraction? Connection? Something beyond simple scientific curiosity? The Calarian Empire had strict genetic isolation protocols. Interaction between species was forbidden. Research was allowed, but personal connection was strictly prohibited. Dahyun was breaking every single rule of his civilization by continuing these conversations. And yet, he continued, I have never met a human like you, Dahyun said softly. Your mind is extraordinary. J1 realized she was blushing. An alien was making her blush. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on her. Something was happening. Something that no scientific protocol could predict. Something that would change everything. First contact was supposed to be about species, about politics, about science. But this was becoming something much more personal. Something was wrong. J1 could feel it in her body. For weeks, she had been experiencing strange symptoms that made no sense. Fatigue that came from nowhere, sudden changes in her appetite, weird sensations in her lower abdomen that felt like nothing she had ever experienced before. The medical scanner in her private quarters was her only friend right now. She had run every test possible, multiple times. Each result confused her more. Computer, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Run advanced genetic analysis. Compare with previous health records. The holographic display flickered to life. Lines of genetic code danced across the screen. Complicated, intricate, impossible. At first, she thought the scanner was broken. Then she thought she was losing her mind. But the results were clear, very clear. She was pregnant. And the genetic structure of the embryo was like nothing in human medical history. Memories of her conversations with Dahyun flooded back. Their long talks, the intellectual connection, the moments of unexpected intimacy, moments that should have been impossible. Biological compatibility between humans and Calarians was supposed to be zero, absolutely zero. Every scientific paper, every research document, every expert opinion stated this as a fundamental truth. Yet here she was, pregnant, with an alien's child. The first test confirmed it. The second test confirmed it again. The third test, run by a different computer system, confirmed it once more. Each test showed the same impossible result. Her body had somehow created a hybrid embryo, part human, part Calarian, growing inside her at an accelerated rate that defied all known biological principles. J1 sat down, her legs suddenly weak. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was a personal revolution. She needed to contact Dahyun. But how? How do you tell an alien that you're carrying a child that should be scientifically impossible? Her communication device buzzed. It was him. I know. Dahyun's voice came through, calm and steady. Our genetic connection has produced something unexpected. J1 couldn't speak. How could he already know? Calarian biological tracking systems detected the embryo formation 3 solar cycles ago, he continued. Our scientists are excited and concerned. Excited, concerned. 2 words that held entire universes of meaning. The embryo was growing fast. Faster than a human pregnancy. Faster than a Calarian reproduction cycle. It was adapting. Changing. Becoming something entirely new. Medical scans showed cellular structures that shifted and modified themselves constantly. Genes that rewrote themselves. A biological system that was learning, growing, becoming more complex with each passing hour. This child, Dahyun said, will be something the galaxy has never seen before. J1 touched her stomach. Something moved inside her. A kick. A response. A sign of the extraordinary life forming within her. The research station suddenly felt very small. The universe suddenly felt very large. First contact was supposed to be about meeting a new species. Nobody told her it might also be about creating one. The conference room was cold. Too cold. J1 sat at the center of a long table, surrounded by people who looked more like judges than scientists. Her research directors, military officials, genetic ethics committee members. Each one stared at her with a mixture of shock, anger, and something else. Fascination. Explain again, said Dr. Park, the head of interstellar research, how this pregnancy is possible. J1 took a deep breath. She had rehearsed this explanation 100 times in her mind. The genetic structures of human and Calarian DNA are more compatible than we previously understood. The embryo is adapting, creating new cellular pathways that bridge our biological differences. A man in a military uniform leaned forward. And you're telling us this child could be a weapon? No, J1 said firmly. This is a scientific breakthrough. The living example of genetic adaptation and interspecies potential. But she could see it in their eyes. They weren't listening to her as a scientist. They were seeing her as a problem to be solved. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the Calarian Empire was having its own crisis. Dahyun stood before the Calarian High Council. Holographic screens displayed genetic analysis of the embryo. The council members, beings with skin like polished silver and eyes that changed color with their emotions, looked both horrified and intrigued. You have violated every genetic isolation protocol, the lead council member said. His voice was like ice. This is not just a scientific breach. This is a fundamental threat to our species' genetic purity. Dahyun remained calm. Our researchers have confirmed the embryo shows extraordinary adaptive capabilities. It could unlock genetic mysteries we've studied for centuries. The council chamber fell silent. Back on the research station, J1's life became a cage of observation and testing. Medical scans every hour. Blood tests multiple times a day. Scientists peering at her like she was some rare specimen. Her body was changing. Faster than a normal pregnancy. The embryo was growing, adapting, becoming something entirely new. Some tests showed cellular structures that could heal themselves. Others showed brain activity that suggested levels of intelligence far beyond human or Calarian norms. We need to contain this, Dr. Park told her one day. For the safety of both species. Contain. The word felt like a prison. Dahyun managed to send encrypted messages. Stay strong, he would say. They cannot understand what we have created. But understanding was the least of their problems. Government agencies from Earth began to get involved. Military research teams wanted access to the genetic data. Some saw the potential for advanced biological technologies. Others saw a potential threat. The Calarian Empire sent its own delegation, cold, calculated, determined to either study or destroy what they saw as a genetic anomaly. J1 realized she was no longer just a researcher. She was a battleground. Her body, her child, caught between two species, two cultures, two entirely different ways of seeing the universe. This child, she whispered to herself, her hand on her stomach, will change everything. The universe listened and waited. The laboratory was silent except for the soft beeping of machines. 12 of the world's top genetic researchers stood around a single holographic display. They stared in complete disbelief. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead geneticist, pointed at the spinning DNA model. "This is impossible," she said, but she didn't sound angry. She sounded amazed. The genetic structure of J1's unborn child was unlike anything they had ever seen. Imagine a puzzle that could solve itself, a blueprint that could change its own design, a living system that learned and adapted with every passing minute. Normal human DNA was fixed, stable, unchanging. This was different. The child's genetic code shifted like living water. Cellular structures rewrote themselves constantly. When the researchers introduced different environmental stimuli, the genetic markers responded immediately. Too quickly, almost like the DNA was thinking. "It's not just adapting," whispered Dr. Park, J1's father. "It's learning." The researchers had run hundreds of tests. Radiation exposure. The genetic structure created protective shields. Extreme temperature changes. The cells adjusted their internal composition. Potential genetic diseases. The DNA actually deleted problematic sequences and replaced them with healthy alternatives. This wasn't just a child. This was a biological supercomputer. Dahyun's communication channel opened. His silver-blue face appeared on the screen. "Our Calarian research teams have reached similar conclusions," he said calmly. "The child represents a quantum leap in genetic potential." Government officials watched from another room. Military researchers took notes. Some saw a potential weapon. Others saw the future of human evolution. The child could survive environments no human or Calarian could tolerate, one military advisor said. Deep space, extreme radiation zones, planets with toxic atmospheres. But the scientists were more interested in the deeper implications. This genetic structure suggested something revolutionary. Not just survival, but total environmental adaptation. J1 listened to the discussions. Her body felt different. The baby moved inside her in ways that seemed intelligent. Sometimes she felt like she could almost hear its thoughts. Not in words, but in strange, complex feelings. Her mother brought her tea, touched her stomach gently. "What are you?" she whispered to the unborn child. The genetic research continued. Each test revealed more mysteries. The child's DNA contained markers from both human and Calarian genetics, but it was creating something entirely new. A third genetic structure that was neither human or Calarian. "We're looking at the first truly adaptive intelligent life form," Dr. Rodriguez explained during a global research conference. "This isn't just a child. This is a biological breakthrough that could change everything we understand about life, adaptation, and genetic potential." Political leaders from multiple countries watched the presentations. Some looked worried. Some looked excited. All of them understood that something extraordinary was happening. Dahyun's voice came through again. "Our civilizations have always believed genetic diversity was about mixing different DNA," he said. "But this child shows us that genetic diversity is about creating entirely new possibilities." The baby kicked inside J1, as if it understood exactly what was being said, as if it was listening, as if it was preparing to change everything. The Calarian battleship appeared without warning. Massive, silent, its metallic surface gleamed like polished silver against the darkness of space. This was no ordinary diplomatic vessel. This was a warship. Alarms screamed across the research station. J1 felt the baby move inside her, a sudden, sharp reaction that seemed to sense the incoming threat. Incoming transmission, the station's computer announced. Its voice was calm. Too calm for the moment. Da-hyun's face appeared on the main screen. But this was not the Da-hyun she knew. His eyes were hard. His silver-blue skin looked tense. "The High Council has made a decision," he said. "They want the child." J1's father stepped forward. Dr. Park was no longer just a scientist. He was a father protecting his daughter. "This is international space," he said firmly. "You have no legal right to take her." The battleship's communication channel opened wider. A high-ranking Calarian official appeared. His skin was darker, almost midnight blue. "The child represents a genetic breakthrough," he stated. "It belongs to the collective scientific knowledge of the Calarian Empire." Belongs. The word hung in the air like a threat. Earth's defense forces were scrambling. Spacecraft moved into defensive positions. Diplomatic channels buzzed with urgent messages. This was more than a scientific dispute. This was becoming an interstellar incident. J1 could feel the baby's reaction. Strange pulses of energy seemed to radiate from her stomach. The medical scanners went crazy. The child's genetic structure was responding to the threat. Adapting, preparing, changing. "We will not allow the child to be used as a weapon," Da-hyun said. His voice was a mix of official protocol and personal emotion. "But the Calarian Empire sees only potential, not life." Military advisors on Earth watched the developing situation. Some saw an opportunity for advanced genetic research. Others saw a potential war brewing between humanity and the Calarian Empire. The research station became a fortress. Protective shields activated. Defensive systems powered up. Scientists became defenders. Research became resistance. Da-hyun had a choice to make: support his empire or protect J1 and their child. "The child is more than a genetic sample," he said suddenly. His voice cut through the tension. "It represents a bridge between our species, a new form of life that could change everything we understand about biological potential." The Calarian battleship moved closer. Its weapons systems hummed with potential energy. J1's mother held her daughter's hand. "They will not take you," she whispered. Her voice was soft but strong. The baby kicked again. This time, the entire station's electronic systems flickered. Computers went wild. Screens danced with impossible genetic sequences. Something was happening. Something beyond human or Calarian understanding. The child was preparing to defend itself. The universe held its breath. Conflict was coming. The research station became a fortress. Scientists from around the world began to arrive. Not just researchers. Defenders. Protectors. Dr. Elena Rodriguez brought advanced genetic protection systems. Dr. Park brought his decades of research. Specialists in interstellar law. Diplomatic experts. They formed a network around J1 and her unborn child. Da-hyun stood at the center of this unlikely alliance. He was no longer just a Calarian explorer. He was a father, a protector. "The child cannot be a weapon," he told the gathered experts. "The child is a living bridge between species." Communication channels from the Calarian battleship continued to demand surrender. But something interesting was happening. Progressive elements within both the Calarian Empire and human governments were starting to listen. J1's body was changing. The baby's genetic structure was creating protective mechanisms that fascinated every scientist present. When medical scanners tried to get too close, subtle energy fields would push them away. When aggressive scanning happened, the child's DNA would shift and hide its most complex sequences. It was protecting itself. "This is more than genetic adaptation," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "This is intelligent defense." The research station became a safe zone. International laws were quickly rewritten. The United Nations passed emergency protocols protecting J1 and her child. The Calarian Empire found its aggressive actions blocked by diplomatic channels. Dahyun shared Kalarian research that showed why the child was so important. The genetic structure represented a breakthrough in adaptive evolution, not just for humans or Kalarians, but for all living species. Imagine a life form that can survive anywhere, he explained. Oceans, space, toxic environments, extreme temperatures. This child represents the next step in biological potential. Some saw a weapon. Others saw hope. J1's parents became unexpected heroes. Her father used his scientific reputation to explain the research. Her mother used her emotional strength to protect her daughter. "This is my grandchild," her mother told international reporters. "Not a research project, not a weapon, a life." The Kalarian battleship remained in space, watching, waiting, but no longer threatening. Communication channels between humans and Kalarians opened in ways they had never been opened before. Scientists began sharing research. Diplomatic teams started conversations that had seemed impossible just weeks before. The child was changing everything, even before being born. Strange energy pulses would sometimes spread from J1's body. Electronic systems would flicker. Communication devices would show impossible genetic sequences. The baby was communicating in its own way. "It's learning," Dahyun would say, "constantly learning." J1 felt different. The baby moved in ways that felt like conversation, not in words, but in feelings, in complex emotional languages that crossed species boundaries. The research station became more than a scientific facility. It became a symbol of hope, of possibility, of what could happen when different species truly tried to understand each other. The universe was watching. Something extraordinary was about to happen.